Hello and welcome to this community forum. We are so glad to have you. Thank you those of you who joined us for Evensong or those who are joining us right now. It is such a pleasure to have Becca Stevens and Kristen Becken to be with us. The Reverend Becca Stevens has spent her life exploring that sacred tension point where the temporal and the eternal meet, and found that meeting point to be what we think of as love. Yet she hasn't simply touched on that in sermons or theological inquiry. She's found evidence of that love in some of the most challenging and tender places in this world, especially where women have emerged from lives of exploitation, addiction, trafficking, and extreme poverty. Miraculously, she has found this love where the grace of the eternal meets the flesh and bone of reality to be an infinite source of healing and renewal. Becca, as many of you know, is an author, an Episcopal priest, a social entrepreneur, founder and president of Thistle Farms in Nashville, Tennessee. She founded Magdalene in 1997, which is now Thistle Farms, to heal, empower, which was in the Google description, and I know how you feel about that word, so I'm just flagging that for your social media team, and employ female survivors of human trafficking, prostitution, and addiction. Thistle Farms employs graduates and survivors to make home and body products sold in stores and in cathedral piazzas near you, right outside. Through her leadership, this has turned into a global movement of justice and change. She has received many awards, as well as being designated a White House Champion of Change in 2011. In 2016, Becca was named a CNN Top Hero of the Year for her work with Thistle Farms and Magdalene. She has written 9 books, including her 2013 memoir, Snake Oil, The Art of Healing and Truth-Telling, and her most recent book, Practically Divine, also available outside, and just a fantastic book. And we also welcome Kristen Becken, her assistant. How long have you served as Becca's assistant?
Almost 7 years.
Almost 7 years. And Kristen has been the on-point person as we put this visit together. This is just the beginning. Becca will be with Leadership Cleveland in the morning early on, and then we're back here on Sunday to preach and to offer a forum for our congregation as well. So I welcome you both. Thank you for traveling from Nashville. We're so thrilled to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
So we're gonna do a little bit of chatting. We're gonna do this same thing again on Sunday morning, but with different questions. It's like all those, when Brene Brown has liked somebody so much, she has 2 interviews in a row. That's what we're trying to do here, except I don't curse as much as she does. Not when I'm in church. I want to, but we're going to get a little bit of time. We really want to hear your story. We want to hear the story of Thistle Farms. But because of the news that we cannot help but see, and that is just breaking our hearts, coming out of Israel and Gaza, which of course, in any newspaper we look at, is also right next to heartbreaking stories of Ukraine and the war there. How do you read those? How do you see those stories, not only as someone who works for justice, but as folks who talk so much about the intersection of war and violence and trafficking?
So where I kind of jumped into that journey was about 2016, 2017. We went to a refugee camp in Greece. It was women coming out of Syria, and we started our first justice enterprise with 9 women there weaving mats. They were taking the life vests and they started weaving mats. And it was my first time to really kind of try to start hearing stories and putting the pieces together about women who have basically surrendered everything so they can find their life. Their homes, their jobs, their everything. And it was life-changing, and it was beautiful, and it was the women, as soon as they started getting an income, started organizing the entire refugee camp, which is, what women do, right? it's like, as soon as I can get some resources, I'm going to help fix this for other people too. And it went on. There ended up being like 50 women who were out of the camp. It was the first real justice enterprise in a refugee camp in Greece, specifically for women. They helped launch another 5. And I think that was like the year after that, the State Department had said something like 15,000 young girls are missing from the refugee camps that they can't even account for. And it was like, okay, so this is where this intersection is and where we need to be. And since then, we were working with women coming out of Eastern Ukraine within 2 months of February 2021. We just hosted one of the heads of the Ukrainian women in Nashville last week, Marina, and they are war weary. They are so war weary. But again, the small group of knitters, and if you want to do something nice, buy a pair of those socks out there, please, 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 please. You know, they made this year with the money they've earned from selling socks and donations, they made 600 school kits for kids who can't make it into school, and you can use them in the bunkers, you can use them everywhere as the war is breaking out.
Wow.
And then, as it happened, we were, again, you have to first fundraise and then you dive in, and I did the fundraising and we dove in and we were working with 4 women this fall, August, September in Palestine. They are 4 women, Rasha and 3 other women who are potters. And we made an order, and it was like, here's our sense of trying to start getting involved in that community. And 3 days ago, we received 300 chalices and patens made by the women in Palestine. And I don't have any idea. Like, it's over. Right? I mean, it's all blown up. It's not, no one's going out. There's no communication. And for me, I just keep trying to jump in small ways and support amazing women who are the peacekeepers, who are the ones leading the way there. And that's the thing that I think we can do pretty well. We have a distribution system. We have a marketing system. We can tell the story to thousands of people. And we can support them, we can fly them in groups over here to get breaks. One of the things I think we did that was one of the best things was 6 months ago, there were 10 women, all knitters from Russian-occupied Ukraine who were living in Kiev, and they went to Western Ukraine for a 4-day spa day. And they sent the best pictures, and it was just like, just for a minute, I need to rest and breathe. Yeah. And it's like what all of us want. People aren't any different. They're just refugees, and they can survive on hope. But it takes all of us supporting groups so that they can be leading other people in that and doing the ministry they're called to do. That was a long answer, sorry.
No.
And our time is up, right? Sorry.
We're going for ice cream now. We're done. We can, yes. One of the things that I really enjoyed is not the right word, but I appreciated in Practically Divine was the idea of daylight, in broad daylight. I think of the term daylighting, which is sort of when we talk about bringing unhealthy systems that are below the ground. We don't want to talk about septic work, we call it daylighting instead. To bring something out into broad daylight, to name truth, is itself healing, is so that we can actually see it and deal with it, which is so productive and so hopeful, which the inversion, the other side of that is, what are the things that drive someone below ground to go from the daylight into this place of not being able to share your story or even know your own? And then when we see what's going on in an instant in Israel and Gaza and Ukraine, in an instant, hundreds and hundreds of folks have to find themselves going underground, and then especially women who find themselves off the grid and in even more vulnerable positions. What does it mean for someone to stumble into that place of whatever the opposite of daylight is going to be?
Well, I know for me personally, it took about 17 years for me staying in the darkness. And in 2013, I was still in a very dark place of my parents being alcoholics and physical and emotional abuse, just a tumultuous life. And in 1997, a candle was lit, and it stayed lit. And so in 2013, I was able to see a light that Thistle Farms had brought to my life. And that's what Thistle Farms does, I think, not only for the people in Nashville, but for people all over the world. They bring a light to bring hope and healing and love. And I was able to stay in our 2-year residential program and work on myself and figure out how to tell my story that was in a healthy way, that made me stronger and gave me a voice. And for so many years, I didn't love myself, and I had the shame and the guilt and of all the things. And I was able to come out of that by a community that wrapped their arms around me and loved me and gave me the hope and healing that I needed to have to be the best version of myself. And I feel over the past 10 years, I've been able to love on myself and appreciate myself and really give my children the life that they wouldn't have if I didn't have that opportunity from the love and acceptance of Thistle Farms. So, broken systems, I feel like all of our stories are the same, we just have different details. A lot of heartache and a lot of hurt happen, but one of the most amazing things is Thistle Farms brings so much joy and light to all those dark places.
Yeah.
I think it's no accident, and y'all know this, that some of the most vulnerable people end up in the most desolate places. And those desolate places are the places it's hardest to get light into. For example, like you can't bring candles into prison. We make our living bringing light and candles. If you want a meaningful Advent, buy one candle and light it all through the Advent season. That light is transformed, at least for me, it's been this way of being present with people in this light. But you can't bring the candles in there. Or last year when we were working with the knitters, we said, what would you like for Christmas? And they were like headlamps, because we're down in the bunkers and we can't see to knit. And to get light down into a bunker, so of course we sent everybody headlamps, but then chocolate, because I kept thinking, if you need a headlamp, you need chocolate, in my mind at least. So I just think bringing things into light sometimes can be pretty hard, and it doesn't take a lot of light. That's the other thing, right? You can find your way with a candle, which is crazy to me. And also I want to say too that I'm grateful for the darkness sometimes. I really am. I'm grateful for the times when I feel lost and I don't know and I'm still wandering a little bit, so that the light still means something. And I feel like the last couple days, the sun has barely rose. It's been so gray, and the world has been kind of gray with all of what's happening. And it's like just a little bit of light. And to remember, it's like sometimes when we're in the darkness, it helps us get to a place of light again. I have to think that way. So.
How do you hold on to hope when you do so much to bring so many people into the light, and then the need is so great? And it all, when I watch what we see in the news, I wonder, are we going to learn? And it's easy to fall into despair. Given all that you've experienced, given all the lives you've touched and the people who have touched you, how do you hold on to your own hope and tend to your own light when the need can be never ending?
Well, I don't think either one of us are confused that it's not like we are doing so much. We definitely believe in a communal vision and a communal work. So we're just part of, you know, several thousand women doing this work together. And I'm not confused about that. That's not humble or modest. That is truth. That is just the truth. And so it's hopeful because you're surrounded by a community of people doing really beautiful things, so you can't help it. And, you know, the idea of sometimes people say, you know, do you put your whole, is it the baptismal covenant? You put the whole grace and trust in his love or something, we're supposed to say?
That sounds familiar.
Is that what it is?
Bishop?
Come on.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in there. We affirm.
Is that the word? But it's something like that, ish. And I was thinking, like, if you're just at home panicking about news, there's no way to put your whole faith and trust. But when you locate yourself in a community, when you are with a community, whether it's in Nepal or in Greece or in Nashville or in Cleveland or in prison or wherever, you ground yourself and all of a sudden you feel this trust and love. And I believe that. I believe in daily practices that are individual practices, but also communal practices. I think that without one or the other, you kind of lose your heart. How do you stay hopeful?
Well, just recently, I wasn't in town and I didn't get to meet Maria. Is it Maria? Marina. It's spelled with the Y. I always get it confused. So I didn't get to physically meet her, but I've known her this whole time. And she got to come to Thistle Farms and...
Is she the Ukrainian?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
She's the head of the Ukrainian team.
Got it.
And just seeing her, I got to see some social media footage and pictures, and she's so full of life and beauty, and she's got this spark in her eye. And I sit and I'm like, how can someone that has been through so much like that have spark in their eye? And that gives me some hope because she does, and she's beautiful, and she remains hopeful. So if she can remain hopeful, knitting in bunkers, you know, I can have some hope too. And we just kind of just share that hope with one another, and it's pretty powerful.
And plus, it's not a requirement that you're hopeful to do the work. Right?
That's exactly right.
Like on days we're not that hopeful, we still break bread, right?
Right.
And on days where we're grieving, we still break bread. On days we're joyful, we break bread. So I think it's more of a practice, and you trust, even when I'm not feeling hopeful or I'm feeling whatever, that if I do this, you know, this too shall pass. It'll all pass. And so you just keep doing it. And I feel really good about that. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm not inspired or happy or joyful all the time. I would hate myself if I was. I love the cynical side of myself and the depressed side of myself. Those are very interesting depths of my soul.
Will you say trust the work, not the inspiration?
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Well, that's what do you want?
Yeah, go on. That's right.
Trust the work, not the inspiration. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Trust the work, not the inspiration. My husband is a musician. We just celebrated 35 years of marriage. Every day he gets up and plays the piano. His first thing, and I bring him coffee when I'm home. And then I go in the bathtub and write. And I'm sorry if that gave anybody a visual. And I hear him play the same stuff over and over and over. And then every now and then it takes off and it goes somewhere else. And I think, oh my gosh, I'm the first person in the world that's heard this melody. And sometimes those melodies, you know, millions of people hear them eventually. But if he didn't do that every day of playing these chords and these mantras and going through it, when that fickle muse decides to come by and inspire him, he's there for it. He's ready to meet it. It's not like he's out grocery shopping and all of a sudden, da 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 da. You know, it doesn't do it. It's like, it's work. And that's how it has to be for justice lovers and lovers of all work that is a practice. You know, I mean, so much of our work is practice. And I believe in that. And it's like I have been very uninspired and I've kept going, and then somebody will say something or something will happen and I'll go, oh my gosh, I'm ready to keep going. I feel it. I see it. I can taste it.
I think that came from one of my favorite chapters, which was the how-to of embracing grace. That was my title. You had a much better title for it. But it was where you talked about, you gave us steps, which is trust your passion, trust work more than inspiration, which I think there's just profound insight there, because we just can't be inspired all the time. But the work still needs to be done.
If you didn't clean your bathroom until you were inspired, you'd be in trouble.
That's exactly right, and you'd have a gross bathroom along the way. You have to form rituals. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, but leading with love and following up. So maybe let's talk about some of those. What kind of rituals in this work keep you grounded, maybe a good word, sane, maybe a right word, the right level of crazy might be the right word. What rituals help to hold you together?
What do we do at Thistle Farms? What's one of our rituals?
So, something that's been going on since 1997 that I mentioned earlier is lighting the candle. We light the candle for the woman who is still out in the darkness so that she may see the light and find their way home. And on Wednesdays, we have a beautiful circle, which we invite the community of Thistle Farms and outside community members. And we have people traveling all over from the world who come by just for our Wednesday morning circles and visit our campus. And we read from Find Your Way, a book that was written by Becca, and women from all over have written stories of our 24 spiritual principles, and we read from it, and then we go around and we share on that principle or whatever you feel is going on. And it's a very powerful ritual that has been bringing our community together for a very, very long time. And people who get to experience that, it's life-changing for a lot of people, because they never leave. They want to stay, and they keep coming, and they volunteer with us, or they get jobs with us, or they come and they just want to be a part of the circle. And that's what you are. You're a part of the circle. And I think it's one of the most powerful rituals that we take part in.
Do you have a personal ritual?
I don't know. I feel like I have several rituals, and my favorite at the moment, which has been my favorite for a while, is I have 3 children. They're all girls, 16, 14, and 8. I have a husband, and I have a 30-minute drive to work every morning. And I spend 15 minutes of that drive talking to my mother every single morning. And then the rest of it, I spend it in silence. And I just really, it's the only silence that I really get to experience until I drive home. But I get to just really get grounded and ready for the day. I think about my day, and I think about my intentions, and, you know, kind of where I'm at. I get a feel for where I am spiritually, emotionally, physically. And it just kind of really sets the tone for my day, because when I leave the house, it's, chaos. So I get that grounding time in the morning, which is really good.
Yeah. You talk about spiritual principles that are a part of Thistle Farms. What are some of them, and how did those get integrated into the whole life of the culture?
Well, that started because y'all know that, like, all this healing stuff, community is the oldest entity that the world knows for healing. Rituals are how communities are disciplined together. All this stuff is old, nothing's new. And so really a lot of what Thistle Farms is based on is the Benedictine model.
Right.
So it's radical hospitality, it's, grow in grace, it's lead with love, all those things that are just part of how a community can be responsible and live together. The practices that we had to start with is, for many women who have histories of sexual abuse, especially as kids, one of their biggest triggers, for me at least is authority. That was the biggest trigger. And so the first thing we wanted to do was establish ritual together that wasn't with authority. So the houses were set up 2 years so people could really bond, rent-free. Nobody's coming off the streets or out of prison with any money. So if you're asking people to pay $125 a week, you're asking them to go hustle, in my opinion. And then no authority lives in the house. remove the authority so people can be an actual community. Doesn't mean you don't have people who are professionals that come in and help, that we have social workers, nurse practitioners, whoever it is that people are needing to make their way, but that we can start really practicing rituals, whether it's Monday night dinner or 30 minutes of silence or the candle lighting. We have yoga classes, we have breathing times together, we have booty lift, is that what it's called?
I don't know.
It's something horrible like that now, that they're getting more and more into the exercise piece of it, so I've kind of bowed out. But these practices, for me, mine is definitely, and I think yours is too, walking in the woods is, so we have set times when people can walk if they don't feel safe alone. Because walking, again, I mean, didn't you love it today in the reading at the church? It was, they were walking along. And that's like every one of my stories, if you ask me on the whatever, any not-for-profit I've started, the story starts, I was walking in the woods. It always starts that way. And it's like you pay attention and things happen. And that's where usually I meet my muse. Anyway, those are the rituals.
Okay.
And knitting for sure. I have to knit every day. That's what I do. I would never, I think a prayer shawl is the person that knits it does the most praying.
And we learned that you would rather make a rosary than pray one.
For sure.
Right? Tell us about that, about crafting as a mode of praying, which leads to justice.
Yeah, I don't understand personally, like how people decide what's a spiritual practice and what isn't. Like how?
I thought you were going to say, I don't understand the rosary, because I went to Catholic school and I don't either.
I'm saying anything, like why is the rosary a spiritual practice but knitting isn't?
Right.
Like who made that rule? Or whatever, baking bread is, but baking pies isn't. You know what I'm just saying? It's like when you
Sister Alberta told me you may not knit. You have to do the rosary. That's it.
I don't even know who that is. Thank God.
First grade.
Oh my gosh, that's scary. But I do think that like where you find this space where you're doing a practice that opens your mind, that's what you're looking for. Yeah. And it's like it's intimate. It's spiritual, it's messy, it's all those things, and we go through a lot, but when you find your niche, it's like, then you have to practice it. And so what I want to say about that is, really, I'm over anybody saying, what do they say, I'm spiritual but not religious? And it's like, okay, well, everybody's spiritual because you take a breath. That's not saying anything. That means I'm human. Yes, you are, that's beautiful. Religion is the discipline. That's all religion is. So you're taking your spirituality and you're using some kind of discipline. And that's what I think that we are called up to do. So when I say I'd rather make a rosary than pray one, that is how I have found the spiritual practice works better for me, is when I'm sitting long enough to make something versus Our Father, we're in heaven, just going as fast as I can to get through it. It would be my goal to go back outside.
Yeah. I find anything, for me, a practice is just anything that gets my mind to shut off. And creating or crafting, I'm not so good at crafting, but...
Oh, I can fix that.
Well, let's find someone that's good at it. I think that there's so many things that keep us kind of locked in whatever modes of thought they are, and they're patterns that keep us farther away from one another and farther away from God. And for me, well, hiking is good, except when you get thinking. So you got to have a little bit of discipline to kind of turn your brain off along the ways.
Or walk long enough.
Yeah.
Maybe you just need to walk farther.
I think so.
But what I was going to say is that the other reason it's important is what we do is we craft together. So there's crafting alone and then there's crafting together. And women have been, I don't know anything about men, so I can only talk about women. Like sewing circles, sewing bees. That's a thing. And there's a reason it's a thing is that if I said, okay, I need 6 of us to come together and we're just going to talk about our trauma for the next 3 hours. It's like traumatic to do that, right? If we sit around and we, right now we're doing a quilt, there's a group, about 12 women doing a quilt together. You wouldn't believe the stories that come out of that. therapeutic, healing, amazing stories. Stories about family, stories about past things, stories about hope. And it doesn't replace mental health. It doesn't replace trauma therapy, but I'm saying it is a way to come together. You're doing something. Again, if you're really crafting, it is not hard. It's doing it a million times. It's utilitarian art. It's useful, utilitarian, fun art. And so you're doing that and you bond with each other. And what we know else about community is that when 4 or 5 are gathered, the Spirit is among us. And so something beautiful comes from that. And so there is the idea of like praying together. What do you call it when everybody's quiet in a circle together? There's a thing it's called.
Seance?
No. Come on, it's big in the Episcopal Church.
Centering prayer?
Centering prayer. That there's something about being silent in community, right? There's something different about being silent in community than being silent on your own. That's crazy, right? But it's true. And the same thing is with whatever our practice is, and that's why I say all the time, everything I learned about growing, $15 million a year, not-for-profit, I learned at my mother's feet at the ECW Bazaar. Everything I needed to know was learned right there. Not in divinity school, it was the ECW.
The book is titled Practically Divine. So much of what you write about is particularities. You talk about how do you care for women who are knitting in a bunker? Get them a headlamp. When I was fortunate to visit Thistle Farms a year and a half ago, I learned about the stories of what is tended to when someone first enters that program. Everything from counseling to dental care. The particularities of life. To be able to, you talk about crafting, and to be able to hold something and create it in the midst. Maybe it keeps us from getting lost in our head, maybe it keeps us exactly where it needs to. But there seems to be real spiritual stuff for you and your work in where we actually taste and touch and connect with one another. How has that always been your spirituality? Has that been something that has evolved? And sometimes that stuff is just painful as all hell. Like, how do we still find the presence of the sacred when the particular is hard, is painful? And how do we tend to the realities of one another's lives in the midst of that?
I'm going to be super honest with you. I don't understand the question.
It's okay. Halfway through, I didn't understand it either.
Okay. I loved the question, though. It was beautiful. And I thought, everything you say is beautiful, but it's so complicated. What did you ask me?
What time is it? It's like 8 o'clock.
Well, did y'all understand what the question was? It was a really good question, didn't you think? We loved the question.
I don't remember it either.
I couldn't wait for Becca to answer it. I was like, don't.
Let me go back to,
I can answer something around the question.
Why, when someone is first entering Thistle Farms, you got to take care of certain pieces of their lives, just real things in their lives. And that seems to be very much a part of how you cared for people in the midst of that. Can you say a little bit about the particularities of life and
when
caring
people
for
come
people?
into Thistle Farms?
So when people come in, they're coming from the streets, they're coming from prison, and they have nothing but the clothes on their backs. And when you enter in, you are given this beautiful basket with towels and hygiene and pajamas and, all the comforts of something that they have been missing for a while, that's just given to you. And then they're taken shopping for clothes, and they get enrolled with a therapist. And like you were mentioning, yes, they get their eye care, all of the physical needs met, and then they get with their therapist and the groups within that the program offers. They have daily programs, and they're wrapped in love by the women. And I think everybody within Thistle Farms community takes part in the healing of that new woman.
And I don't think that's the hard part, do you?
No.
That's not the hard
easy.
part. That's the easy
to
part
love them.
for me.
Yeah.
I mean, because everybody comes in super grateful.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a bra. It's like, oh my God, I got a new bra. That's huge. And people are really grateful. It's when they figure out they're really mad. That's when it's hard.
When they figure out that they're mad.
Really mad.
Yeah.
Underneath the gratitude, there's a lot of anger. And there's a lot to be angry about, and that's where the spiritual, like you're talking about, that's where I thought the question was going, is like, you know, it's complicated and it takes a long time. And I remember the first time a woman said to me, this was about a year and a half into it, and she had, everything was coming to the surface, and she said, I know you want me to be grateful, but I'm not. I hate you.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And she meant it at that point. And I was like, that's there. That is, I'm okay walking through that, giving you space, figuring out what the next thing is, because, you know, there's been a lot of shit in your life, and it's horrible, and there's nothing anybody can do to fix that. And so for me, the spiritual part, or the hard part of the spiritual journey, is to say to each other, I'm willing to stay with you, not because you're super grateful. The love and the faith is when you're super mad. And one of our spiritual principles is leave thankfully. Everybody comes thankful. Try leaving. Like, you don't have to blow up. You don't have to be mad. It can be time for you to go. Let's leave grateful. And that's, to me, how you save a long-term relationship, is when you can leave thankfully.
And what is that relationship like in the years afterwards? I know that any time I've had hard work to do, it's taken a lot more than 2 years. So what does that mean for staying in relationship, cultivating that gratitude, or just having real life while being connected to one another?
One of the fabulous things that Thistle Farms has are leaders that are graduates who have, you know, been around since 1997, and they've stayed working there. And so we're able to still keep community with those graduates. Once you graduate the 2-year program, you're considered a sister for life. And so, you know, our sisters continue to work there. But we also have a very strong graduate connection with folks who, even though they're not working at Thistle Farms, they've moved on somewhere. They could be sober and doing great, or they could not be doing great, and we still maintain a really good connection. They can come up to Thistle Farms anytime, and they do, and we love on them, and if they're hungry and they need to eat, we feed them. We have a graduate Facebook page, so we're all connected on Facebook all the time. Good. Which is awesome, so we're able to keep up with everybody, and we have a graduate coordinator now who, you know, arranges the parties and stuff like that. But we have a graduate fund for any graduates who are needing financial assistance. So there's a lot that is done to keep the community alive and going.
And do you stay connected to graduates from other cities as well, or is it really particular to one's own city?
Well, both. It's both and, because right now, thank you.
I don't know what was happening.
Sorry about that.
You were spitting in it or something, causing it to short out. No, I think because we have more than 400 women on the waiting list, we're all about referrals. So we refer women to all the programs around the country that we can, and people refer back to us, and we're in communication. So sister programs mean it's an affiliated network, so everybody's connected to each other, and we do monthly Zooms, and people do best practices and trainings. It could be around legislation one month, it could be around board development, it could be around fundraising, whatever the things are that people need. But graduates are on those calls all the time, and you start developing relationships. You see people, we've had people who are graduating from Omaha, Nebraska, now they're back working in Nashville. They came back home, and you get to be together. So it's a big community.
Yeah. Well,
I was listening, sorry.
Okay, I want to make sure folks have time to stop by and pick up some great stuff from the table. And you also just mentioned pajamas a few minutes ago, and so now I'm thinking it's time for us all to turn in and call it, make it a
Subliminal messaging.
That was pretty good. Oh, it's time to head out. So I want to thank you both for being with us this evening. We look forward to having with you on Sunday morning. We can't wait to hear you preach again. And thank you for being a part of, thank you for your work.
Oh my gosh,
being with
thank
us
you. This
evening.
is so fun.
Thank
This
you.
is our first time in Cleveland, really big time. So this is fun. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. And
That was me.
that was you that time. I'm not moving. I'm not touching the mic. So don't pass the table without getting, what is the feature product of the day? Socks, candles. Sock and a candle.
You can walk out for less than $100 with a sock and candle. A bar